In today's video, I'm going to give you all of the reasons why I will always shoot tethered if at all possible. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So today we are talking about shooting tethered. Specifically, I want to answer some questions that I get because I get a lot of questions from you asking me why would you even bother shooting tethered, because there is some extra complexity and a lot of hassle to set up a tethering station. And so why would you want to do that? And so today I'm going to give you the 6 reasons, the main reasons. There's loads of reasons, but I'm going to give you the main 6 that I will always shoot tethered if at all possible. So let's get started. Okay, so the first one is feedback. And when I'm referring to feedback, I'm talking about the quality of feedback that you get from a larger screen compared to the screen on the back of your camera. The most obvious thing that you can get from a larger screen is to check your focus. On the back screen of your camera, everything sometimes looks in focus because the screen is tiny, and so when you shrink everything down, everything looks in focus, so you can't really tell whether you've actually nailed the focus or not. It could be slightly soft. You're not going to be able to tell from the screen on the back of your camera. Now you can zoom in and out, of course, on your camera. However, that is not really a practical way to shoot when you're on set. And in order to, zoom in and then pan across the whole photo to make sure that everything's in focus, you'd be looking at maybe 20-30 seconds in between photos, and it's not a practical way to work. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that when you get to see the whole photograph in high detail, because it's a higher resolution monitor, then you get to see the whole context of the image, because sometimes it's not just about the subject, it's all of the other elements that are in the photo as well that make up the entire image. And so there may be something wrong with the image. You may have a say a plant somewhere in the back and it's not quite in the right position, and it's difficult to see that on a small screen, because again, you have to zoom in, and then when you zoom in, you lose the context of the photograph because you don't know how maybe the placement of that plant may affect the placement of something else. And so hopefully this makes sense, but what I'm talking about is seeing the whole image at once in high resolution, and that's something that you can only do with a larger monitor. The second reason is that you have better collaboration with the other people on set. So often it's not just you and the subject. You may have the client, you might have an art director, you might have hair and makeup, stylists, all sorts of people working on set that are contributing to the image. And so they need to see the images that are being captured. And if you don't have a tethering station where they can look at an external monitor, then they're all going to be bunched up around you trying to look at the back of your camera. That is not a practical way, first of all, to work. And second of all, it can be really irritating for the photographer, because often if you've got a person that you're photographing, you're trying to maintain that connection with that person. And if you're having to stop and show the back of your camera to all these other people, then that breaks that flow, and so it breaks the connection that you have with your subject. So it's always better to have a separate monitor so that you can continue shooting. You can look at the back of your camera, and then everyone else can look at the monitor. And often what will also happen is that because you've got a bunch of separate eyes looking at the images that you're capturing, if there is something that you've missed, often they will come over and tell you. So that always works better when you've got an external monitor rather than looking at the back of the screen on your camera. The third reason is workflow, because at the end of every shoot, you have to get the images from your camera onto a computer. Now, it's not really a big deal if it's a small shoot, but often we're shooting for 1 or 2 days, and at the end of every day, it's not unusual to end up with maybe 7,000-8,000 images. Now, those images have to go onto a computer. If you have to do that manually by taking the card out of the camera and then putting it into the computer, that can often take 1 or 2 hours to transfer everything across. Now, if you're shooting tethered, you don't have to worry about that, because that's happening as you shoot. The images are being transferred directly onto the computer. So that's about 1 or 2 hours worth of work that doesn't have to happen at the end of the shoot. Reason number 4 is being able to control the settings of your camera from the computer. Now, this is going to depend on the software that you use, but you can definitely do this if you're using Lightroom or Capture One. And the scenarios typically where this is really useful is when you are shooting product, because when shooting product, often there's a lot of compositing that has to take place. And so for that to be easier in the edit, you don't want the camera to move. Typically you have your camera set up on a tripod and you don't want it to move. And if you are reaching for the camera to change settings, there's always a risk that you may accidentally bump something and move the position of the camera. And so being able to control all of those settings from your computer is really, really useful. So you can do things like changing your focus points, you can change your shutter speed, your ISO, your aperture, all of that sort of stuff can be done. And you can even fire the camera off from the computer. So there's never any danger of anyone coming close to the camera and just bumping something and ruining the shot. Reason number 5 is a bit of a weird one, and hopefully I'll explain this properly. But there is a level of professionalism that is projected when you have a setup that looks complicated. Now, we don't shoot tethered just to play the, for the theatrics of impressing the client. But if the client is not experienced in the industry, and all you do is turn up with a camera, then you don't look any different to an amateur photographer that just turns up with a camera. And so there is an element where shooting tethered and looking at this setup that looks quite complicated when they turn up, you've got lights, you've got cameras, you've got, computers and wires going all over the place. It looks different. It looks like not anyone can do it, and it looks more professional. So there is, like I said, a perception to this. It's not the reason why you should tethered, but it also helps you to portray to the client that what you do is not easy, and not anyone can do that. The next reason is looks and presets. And the reason that this is important is that often if you've got a client that, again, is not very experienced in the industry, when you are capturing your images in RAW format, when someone looks at that image on a screen, it can look a little dull because it doesn't have any contrast. The color may be toned down, and it doesn't look very nice straight out of camera. Now, the client may not understand that that's not what the final image is going to look like. So depending on the software that you use, and again, you can do this with Lightroom and Capture One, is that you can have a preset or a look applied to the image so that it is applied automatically as you're capturing the image. So you're capturing a raw image and Lightroom or Capture One is putting this preset over the top of it, but it's not baking it into the image. So this is just going over the top of it. So when the client is looking at the image, you can put a little more contrast, you can tweak the colors, you can tweak the white balance, you can do whatever you like so that the image looks a little bit more what the end product is going to look like. So it does give a level of confidence to the client that you're getting the type of images that they need. Okay, I've got a last one here that is a bit of a bonus one because I hadn't thought about it, but it just sort of popped into my head, which is related to the workflow stuff that we've already talked about. And that is that when you're shooting tethered, you are also introducing a level of redundancy because depending again on the software that you use and the camera that you have, you can configure the whole setup so that the images are recorded to the card on the camera as well as also going to the computer. So you have now provided redundancy because you've got the images living in two different spots. And so when we finish the shoot, typically what we do is that we have one person that's in charge of carrying the laptop with them. That's typically going to be me. And then somebody else can carry the cards with the images so that if anything happens to either person, a bag gets lost or something gets damaged, then we at the very least have a copy of all the images that we took on that day, so we haven't lost the work that we've done. So that is again just a byproduct of shooting tethered, and it's something that you can configure to provide that redundancy for you. Okay, that's it. Hopefully this has been useful. I know we went really fast, so if you have any questions about anything that I talked about, just leave them in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have in there. And if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you could click the like button. It makes a massive difference to me, and that's a way that you can support me. And if you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's completely free, but if you do that, then YouTube will let you know when I upload my next video. Anyway, that's all that I have got for you today. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.